If you think the Epstein story was one powerful man acting alone, this episode is the part that makes people angry, because the court documents describe something closer to a system, not a secret list, not a movie plot, a real-world setup that, according to prosecutors, used recruiting, money, and adult helpers to keep going. Quick warning, this involves sexual abuse and trafficking allegations involving minors. I'm keeping it non-graphic and factual. Here's the big picture first. When federal prosecutors charged Jeffrey Epstein in New York in July 2019, they alleged he didn't just target underage girls, he allegedly built a pipeline. The DOJ said Epstein used several employees and associates to make sure he had a steady supply of victims, and that some girls were paid to recruit other underage girls. That's the network piece people miss. It wasn't only about what happened behind closed doors. It was also about how victims were allegedly brought in, again and again. The charging language also gives you the timeline prosecutors focused on. The 2019 indictment alleged conduct spanning 2002 through 2005, with crimes committed in places including New York and Palm Beach, Florida. So when you hear how did this happen, start there. Multiple years, multiple locations, and a pattern prosecutors said repeated. Now, where does Ghislaine Maxwell fit in? She's the most legally confirmed part of the network story, because she wasn't just named, she was prosecuted, convicted, and sentenced. The DOJ charged her in July 2020, alleging that in the mid-1990s she helped recruit, groom, and facilitate abuse of girls as young as 14, and that she played a critical role in grooming and abuse that occurred across different places. Later, prosecutors proved enough at trial for a jury conviction. In June 2022, Maxwell was sentenced to 20 years in prison after being found guilty on multiple counts, including sex trafficking conspiracy and sex trafficking of a minor. And in October 2025, the U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear her appeal, leaving her conviction in place. So what does grooming look like in the documents? Without getting graphic, the Maxwell charging release describes classic trust-building tactics. Prosecutors alleged she tried to befriend victims, asked about their lives, took them on outings like shopping or to the movies, and used her presence as an adult woman to make the situation seem safe and normal. The government also alleged she encouraged interactions with Epstein and helped normalize what was happening. Again, we're keeping this high level and non-graphic. Here's why that detail matters. It explains why victims didn't always see the danger at the start. Prosecutors alleged the system didn't rely only on threats. It relied on trust, routine, and money. And then the recruiting loop kept the pipeline alive. Now, when people online say who else was involved, this is where you have to separate proven from mentioned. Proven in court, Maxwell was convicted and sentenced for her role over years. In the Epstein charging documents, prosecutors also alleged employees and associates helped him maintain access to victims, but many names that float around online come from logs, contacts, rumors, or civil filings, and being mentioned in documents is not the same as being charged, and definitely not the same as being convicted. That's also why network conversations get messy fast. The internet loves to turn this into, if someone's name appears anywhere, they're guilty. That's not how evidence works. The clean, safe way to cover this is stick to what law enforcement alleged in official documents and what courts actually proved. So if you want the simplest description of how it worked, based on prosecutors' own words, it's this: the government alleged Epstein created a pattern where underage girls were enticed with money, and some were then paid to bring in more girls, while people around him helped make that access possible. And in Maxwell's case, prosecutors allege she helped recruit and groom girls and created a sense of safety that made them more vulnerable. And that leads to the biggest question of this whole series. If the system depended on people, routines, and silence, what happens when one person goes down, but the system never gets fully mapped? Next episode, we move into the collapse phase, the 2019 arrest. What changed overnight? and why the story didn't end there. Drop your take in the comments. Do you think the public focuses too much on names and not enough on how trafficking systems actually operate? Like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. This is Tea with Timeline.